The Baltimore Ravens lose a heartbreaker to the Cincinnati Bengals in the wildcard weekend. 24-17, we talk about it here in a therapy session, our first live ever post-game show here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in here to a postcast edition recap episode of Locked On Ravens. We are your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you, as always, for tuning in with us here, making us your first listen of the day. Free and available on all platforms, as always, including over on YouTube. And today's recap postcast episode is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less in their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. And here we are. It is the first ever live edition of Locked On Ravens. We're going to start doing these after every Ravens game. Obviously, it's going to be a while before the next one, unfortunately, as Baltimore falls 24-17 to the Bengals. And this is a game that really, it's crushing in so many different ways. And this live show is going to be an opportunity for me to engage with chat, engage with the viewers a little bit more. This is also going to be live on audio form as well. So while we're actually streaming on YouTube right now, and that's how we're going to be streaming it, the actual audio version of this will go up, and we'll actually have our regular Monday episode still 6 a.m. Eastern time. So that's how we're going to do it here. But if you want to hop in the chat, you can comment in the YouTube comments, and we have guys in here, multiple people. I'm super excited to do this here. And we have from Xrovers 1, 2, 3, 4. What a sad day it is, because it felt like it was a game where I think a lot of people expected blowout. The Ravens down Lamar Jackson, who knows what we were going to see, but they were in this game till the end. They showed fight and they showed promise, but it was the same types of things, the same issues that plagued this team over the course of the whole year. They come back and they bite them, and it's stuff that I had said throughout the whole season. The red zone inefficiencies, questionable play calling, questionable time management for sure. In this one, we'll talk about that. Also, big penalties, and it sunk them in the end. Obviously, the big play, though, and we'll talk about it. And we also have Zewers 1, 2, 3, 4 easily could have won. I agree, because you look at where the Ravens were early in this game, and they go into the halftime locker room up 10-9 on a team that people probably expected this game to be, 20-0 or 23-10 or something. This was a 10-9 game. The Ravens were in it. They were winning the game, and they had the opportunity to go up by even more. They got the ball back in the second half. They didn't really do anything with that, though. J.K. Dobbins ripped off a huge run, and then they go 3 plays, nothing doing. But the big play was the Tyler Huntley quarterback sneak, where the Ravens get the ball down right at the Cincinnati 2-yard line. There's a huge run by Tyler Huntley. The next 3 play calls for the Ravens, I'll read them out right here. You have a incomplete pass to Patrick Ricard in the flat, which I think we've seen far too many times over the course of the year for Baltimore. Then you have a 1-yard run from Gus Edwards. That's the type of play. You hand the ball to J.K. Dobbins, hand the ball to Gus Edwards. Those two guys in this offense, they have done work. They have proven themselves. These are not unproven guys where you're thinking, well, can they gain you a yard or two in the red zone or right at the goal line? They absolutely can. That was a step in the right direction. But then on a third, and I'd call it a very long 1 yard, the Ravens decide to quarterback sneak it. Tyler Huntley goes up with the ball. It gets knocked out of his hands. Sam Hubbard picks it up, runs the other way. It's a touchdown. The rest is history. This was a game that, again, that 14-point swing, in likely, because maybe he gets stuffed there. It looked like he was, but if the ball doesn't come out of his hands, it's at least an 11-point swing and a 7-point loss, either way you look at it. But I do think that the Ravens fought in this one, but the issue was it was just one or two things where I think also the other key part of this, the other big topic of conversation, has been the play calling and the time management. Both of those things coming into effect over the course of this game. I mean, the time management for me was the one where, the play calling itself was an issue in some areas, but the time management at the end of the game, Baltimore, I don't know what I don't know what was going on. I mean, maybe I tweeted it out. Maybe they were saving their timeouts for week 1 of next year. I don't know what they were doing, but they continuously let time run off of the clock, and it absolutely sunk them in the end because they had a 4th and 20 with 8 seconds left. They had to rush some things, and you're thinking to yourself, why aren't you calling the timeouts? Why aren't you stopping the clock? If the Bengals get the ball back, maybe you're trying to run as much clock off as you can, but you can't operate under that assumption when you're not really anywhere close-ish. I think Baltimore got down to the 17-yard line of the Bengals, maybe right in that area. And so the Ravens at that point, they get into bad situations. And then out of all the time, people were clamoring, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. Out of all the times the Ravens could have used their running backs to run the ball, they decided to do it with Justice Hill with under 30 seconds left. And then there's a 10-yard penalty by Kevin Zeitler, which was it a penalty? It's a conversation for another day, but it puts them back 10 yards. So it's a net loss overall. They didn't really gain much on the play anyway. So it's just the timing of these things, the situational awareness of everything that goes on. So it's a game that comes down to the little things and things that we've been talking about all year here. I mean, some other comments here. Fossil says Ravens were the better team today, beat themselves, been doing it all season. That has been a theme, beating themselves for most of the season, where it has been the late fourth quarter comebacks and the stuff that I touched on earlier. But I think a lot of this stuff here, Tyler Huntley had a really bad interception right out of the gate, right? He pretty much threw it to Akeem Davis-Gaither, I think was the Bengals defender in the area, led Mark Andrews way too much. It came into the area of Akeem Davis-Gaither. He picks it off. But at the same time, it's just things that I and others, and it feels like everybody, have been saying for the Ravens to just, can you just fix this one issue? Can you make it maybe even just, at the very least, not as much of an issue? And again, in the red zone in this game, Baltimore started off 1 for 1. I was like, hey, maybe we're going to get some good red zone possessions here. Baltimore ends their year going 1 for 4 in the red zone, trading touchdown for field goals, turning the ball over in the red zone. And what I said the whole year, if you've been with me the whole year, I said that is not going to get you past teams like the Bengals or the Bills or the Chiefs or any of those teams you want to beat, who are right now the big three in the AFC, according to a lot of people, are Kansas City. It is Kansas City, Buffalo, and Cincinnati. You can't do it against a Bengals team that honestly the Ravens probably should have beaten this one, all things considered, but it is a full 60 minutes. You got to take everything into account here. So I agree with a lot of people here in the chat. Defense played super well here from Darren Thompson, very upset with clock management at the end of the game. Absolutely. I still wonder just what the Ravens were doing, where you just see clock, it's just ticking and ticking and ticking, and then you have to call a timeout because of a potential delay of game issue. It's just, there are so many different things that went wrong for them in a game where actually a lot went right, or at least more than I was expecting went right for them. Huntley in this game overall, again, I mentioned the bad start to his contest, but he ended up finishing 17-29, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was on. After that interception, he was on for a lot of the game, but it did turn into, a lot of people are going to remember the interception. A lot of people are going to remember the fumble. I think everybody's going to remember the fumble at the goal line, where that play is actually if people remember, that's the exact same thing that happened to Lamar Jackson in that 2018 Cleveland game for the division, where he went up with the ball before he crossed the plane. A Browns defender knocked it out of his arms. And it's pretty much the exact same thing that happened, but you're not close enough to the end zone to call that play right there. You have J.K. Dobbins, you have Gus Edwards. Edwards, from a stat perspective, he only averaged 3.3 yards per carry. J.K. Dobbins averaged 4.8. But it felt like the Ravens were trying in certain situations to give the ball back to Tyler Huntley as a runner, where I think we've talked about it before. Tyler Huntley, he's fine as a runner. It's an aspect of his game that is a positive, but he's not Lamar Jackson. He's not as dynamic in open space. So that was a big issue for them overall. And so I think we can just talk to what the Ravens have on the field there. It's not Lamar Jackson. I think you have the proven option in J.K. Dobbins. You have the proven option in Gus Edwards. You have to get 1 yard at the very maximum, a very long one, if not you want to round that up to 2. I trust J.K. Dobbins in that situation. I trust Gus Edwards in that situation. A quarterback sneak from the half-inch line that's a much better call than a long 1 yard line. So when we get back here in our second segment, we'll be diving into some more comments. We'll be talking a bit about the defensive performance and more here. So be sure to stay tuned. We still have a lot to talk about here. Again, first ever live edition of Locked On Ravens. I'm super excited. We're going to be doing these for really every Ravens game. We're going to start them up again, obviously 2023, now that Baltimore is out of the postseason picture, but we still have a lot to talk about. Don't go anywhere. But first, I do want to tell you a bit about Prize Picks. And now the Ravens season is over. I've been in fantasy basketball mode for a while now. I'm a Denver Nuggets guy. So I look over to my team right now. I'm undefeated in fantasy basketball. So hopefully my stars can continue to pave the way for me. But if you want a different twist on fantasy, be sure to check out Prize Picks. Prize Picks is super easy to use. You can have a ton of current entries and how it works. Just pick 2 to 5 players, and if they will go score more or less in their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch, including the NFL, the NBA, the MLB. You have NHL, PGA, college football, college basketball, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's really that easy. They have safe and fast withdrawals, and they're currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. You deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100. And this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online. And I do wish that sometimes life came with a user manual, but BetterHelp Online Therapy is basically the next best thing. Unfortunately, life doesn't come with that user manual. So when it's not working for you, it is normal to feel stuck. Therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, secure, and accessible anywhere 100% online. And there are a lot of benefits to therapy, such as learning coping skills, self-empowerment, dealing with trauma, and more. And so many people have benefited from the help of therapy. Everyone deserves to feel their best. BetterHelp makes it easy to get started. As the world's largest therapy service, they've matched millions of people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. You have all the benefits of in-person therapy. Plus, it's more convenient, more accessible, and more affordable. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist, and if things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It couldn't be simpler. No waiting room, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We return. It's our second segment here at Locked On Ravens live edition postcast. We are talking this Ravens and Bengals game. Again, thank you so much for being here, either live with us, if you're watching the replay on YouTube, or in audio form where this is going up. Again, this gives me an opportunity to engage with chat a little bit more, an instant reaction to the Ravens in their games. We'll be doing this also for free agency, big news as well, the draft. So I'm excited to kind of dive into this whole live content creation because it's only been recorded episodes for me. So obviously the Ravens, it's a heartbreaking thing to talk about. And I always wonder whether you would, and it's different for every fan, right? But whether you would want to see your team lose a blowout, you're getting blown out 20-0 in the first quarter of a playoff game. You've kind of accepted, all right, this is what it is. The season's over. It's disappointing, but whatever. Or would you rather have what happened on Sunday night where the Ravens, they come out, they're fighting, they have a real chance to win this game, and then it's just pure heartbreak and it's just pure emotion all the way. So let's get to a couple more comments here. I'm scrolling through here. Brandon DeShields, fitting way to lose. Offense has been weird since the Bills game. Definitely after the Saints game, we've been horrible on offense. Proud of the efforts in the McDonald defense is a plus this offseason. Good game. And look, it was a good game, right? It was an entertaining game, but obviously when you're looking at it from the Ravens' perspective, the way they started off the year, how they dominated the Jets. They should have won that Dolphins game. They come and they beat the Patriots on a huge play from Kyle Hamilton. But then the theme was the fourth quarter collapses early from the Mike McDonald defense. The Miami game, I don't think the fourth quarter was called very well. The Bills game, there was some questionable stuff in there too. But I give a lot of credit to the way Mike McDonald grew as a play caller, as a defensive coordinator this year. I am very encouraged by Mike McDonald. Now, on the other side of things, I know the big topic is Greg Roman. If you have been listening to me here on Locked On Ravens before, I thought that the timing for the Greg Roman firing, if there is a timing, it is now. That I think it is time for the Ravens to move on. I think that things have grown pretty stale between both sides, and it has been, again, the recurring issues, the same issues, lack of situational awareness, the time management. And honestly, time management, I think, falls more on John Harbaugh when you're looking at it. But I do think when you're talking about the play calling aspect of it, the Greg Roman offense, there have been too many miscues, too many, delay of game issues. What personnel are you using? Is the offense tailored to Lamar Jackson's skill set, if he even is your quarterback next year? And hopefully he is. But to me, I just think that this is probably the time you let him go. You say, look, they'll probably do the thing where, they've mutually agreed to part ways if that's how they decide to do it. And then you can bring in somebody if the Ravens do franchise tag Lamar, or if he comes back and he signs that long-term extension. I think maximizes his skill sets a little more. We'll talk about the offseason and a bit more coming up in a few minutes and in the final segment of this. But I think for Baltimore, priority number one is probably, if you are committing to Lamar Jackson, which I think they should, if you get that done, find an offensive coordinator where you can give him a DeAndre Hopkins. You can give him some of the like Stephon Diggs or AJ Browns or some of those guys. You can get Lamar those weapons and you can maximize that. You can still use the run game. I'm not saying abandon the run game. The Ravens are super talented in the run game. You have Dobbins and Edwards and whatnot, but it has been, I think, too much for Greg Roman here in Baltimore. I think the Ravens offense has outgrown Greg Roman. And even, if you want to argue that Greg Roman has outgrown the Ravens, you can. I don't think Greg Roman is a bad offensive coordinator. I just don't think he's the right man for the job in Baltimore anymore. So my personal opinion is that Baltimore should move on from Greg Roman here. I just think it is time for that to go. We also have a comment from Maggie Best saying, I feel bad being mad at Huntley. He stepped in for a quarterback no one could replace, and he gave us a chance. Time management and play calling are why we lost. I agree. I'm not mad at Tyler Huntley for this performance. There were certain areas where you definitely can say, yeah, he needs to be better. He needs to improve. The interception was not good. He had a couple of interesting decisions, but I'm not pinning this loss on Tyler Huntley. If I'm the Ravens, if I'm a Ravens fan, I do think it does come down to the end of game time management, the play call on the quarterback sneak. Again, that is a likely 14-point swing and a 7-point loss. You can't overstate that. We have outcoached, nothing to see here from Be More Business 20. I do think this was there were very questionable, I'd say, coaching decisions in this game, which I know we've said it all year. We've seen multiple. You can even go back to last year if you really wanted to, with some of those 2-point conversions from John Harbaugh, the decision to go for it versus not go for it. We've seen questionable decisions from John Harbaugh, from Greg Roman, but I don't think that John Harbaugh is the one that kind of is the scapegoat for all this right now. Does he deserve blame? Absolutely. 100% he does. But if I'm thinking, what are the Ravens going to do this offseason? I don't think they are going to move on from John Harbaugh this offseason. I think Greg Roman, my opinion is that they will, but I think they'd give John Harbaugh next year to kind of see, all right, can a Ravens team led by John Harbaugh in what hopefully will be Lamar Jackson, can that move them past this complacency? And I know longtime listeners and viewers of me have heard the word complacency over and over and over again, but here we are talking about it again. Let's go through the Lamar Jackson timeline. Well, let's just start off with this first. The Ravens have not advanced to the AFC Championship game since when? Since they won the Super Bowl back in the 2012-2013 season. The Lamar Jackson timeline has been, they made the wild card round in 2018. Lamar pretty much saved that season. They lose there. You're like, okay, they rip off all those wins. They get to the playoffs. That's fine. 2019, 14-2, fun year, historic offense. They get the first round bye. They lose in the divisional round. Super disappointing. I thought that was the year, but you say, you know what? Maybe they can do more next year. 2020 was weird with everything going on in the pandemic and the rookies not getting fully acclimated and just everything that happened in that year. But 2020, they make it back to the playoffs. They actually win in the wild card round. So that is growth to me. You win the playoff game, but then you lose in the divisional round again. 2021, I kind of considered a wash due to the injury. Still disappointing the way they started and how they finished out. But, you can kind of say, what the injuries happened and that's that. 2022 was the year that I had said, to me, this is an AFC Championship or bust season. Because you have had the wild card exits, you have had the divisional exits, you've won the playoff game. Can you continue to ascend? 5 years and very minimal ascension and a lot of complacency. Give the Ravens credit, they can win in the regular season, but that's not the goal. The goal is not for Baltimore to win in the regular season. So Well, John Harbaugh, for the most part, has his guys ready. We can even talk about the preseason, how many games they've won in the preseason. That stuff doesn't matter. What matters is the Ravens winning in the playoffs. So that's where I want to see the growth. That's where I want to see the success. Can the Ravens offense, can the Ravens defense, can their special teams, can their coaches not just be a regular season team? Can they be a playoff team? So for me, that's where I think changes are made. And to me, I think that does start with Greg Roman. And then Justin Thrasher says it was a penalty, but you can't throw the flag in that situation. That one doesn't impact the outcome of a play. It totally changed the play calling. I think Justin's referring to the Justice Hill play where Kevin Zeitler had the flag. Maybe it's something different, but it was interesting that penalty. I can see because he kind of hooked the inside of the shoulder pad a little bit, at least from my angle, but I don't know in that situation. Mike John says, would you rather be the Chargers or Ravens from a roster standpoint moving forward? This is a good question, actually. I think that the Chargers have one of the most talented rosters in the NFL right now. Justin Herbert, I think he's a gamer, although I think some of those playoff agendas we were seeing with Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, 3 years, no playoff wins. I know with different circumstances. I like the Chargers roster a lot. I think there's more certainty right now in the Chargers roster than there is with the Ravens. I think if you bring back Lamar, I'm confident if the Ravens make the changes necessary, if they finally do it, if they finally bring in the wide receiver, if they finally bring in a new offensive coordinator, I think I like where the Ravens are a little bit more, but I think it all hinges on Lamar Jackson. But I think the Chargers have done a really good job roster construction-wise. When we're talking about head coaches, Brandon Staley is definitely a guy where you're thinking, maybe he's not long for Los Angeles over there. So you got Loving the Live from Instant Classic. I appreciate it. I'm excited we're doing this and doing the live stuff. I'm going to be diving into it more here. Justin Thrasher also says Roman has to go and the Lamar drama and go get him a veteran wide receiver. We aren't that far away. I also don't think they're far away, but they have to make those necessary changes where in a game like this against the Bengals, you can have an offensive system that you can rely on. And look, I understand you don't have your star quarterback. You don't have your number one or your number two wide receiver. The issue was the fact that it got to that point anyway with the wide receivers where you're talking about them betting on the young guys. I thought it was fine in theory, but I would have really, really liked them. My whole stance was I really wanted them to go out and get that veteran, that star for Lamar. Because in this situation, you can't have Bateman go down. You can't have Duvernay go down. And all of a sudden, what happens? They both go down, and then you enter a playoff game against Cincinnati with Demarcus Robinson and Sammy Watkins and James Prochet and Tyler Wallace. It's not going to get it done against the team. On the other side of that ball, Jamar Chase was making big catches for the Bengals, T. Higgins. So many playmakers on that Cincinnati offense. So there's a lot to talk about. We have a good question from Instant Classic, which we're going to talk about in the third segment. We're going to head into our final break. Don't go anywhere. We're still rocking it up here live on Locked On Ravens, although in unfortunate fashion as Baltimore loses to Cincinnati in the wild card round of the playoffs, 24-17. So still a lot to talk about, but first, this episode is sponsored by Ultimate Football GM, and I'm super excited to tell you about our new partner and sponsor, the mobile game Ultimate Football GM. And if you ever dreamed of becoming an NFL general manager and managing your football franchise, your dream can come true, and this game is for you. You can manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for things like hiring the right coaches and coordinators. You can trade players. You can make draft picks and navigate your franchise through free agency on the draft and all the ups and downs of a season. You have all this in a challenging and realistic game world. You have Ultimate Football GM in a completely free and playable offline setting, so you can play on the go as you want when you want to. And us over at Locked On, our hosts are having a little competition. So if you want to do that with your friends or family, feel free. It's super fun. Locked On Ravens listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. Now the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM, start your dynasty today. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens here live, although this is the Sunday night postcast edition, so you can listen to us live on YouTube or watch us live on YouTube. Comment in the show below. You can also listen to the replay that'll be out immediately after, I'm assuming. This is my first time. I'm kind of vibing through it right now, and then also it will be uploaded in audio form. And we will still have our regularly scheduled Monday episode, Monday 6 a.m. We're going to be diving into more of these topics. This is more of the, informal reaction, interacting with chat stuff I'm really excited to do. But the actual Monday episode will be diving into, obviously, more of the Ravens' loss to Cincinnati here. And also, if you haven't already, be sure to follow along with us. You can like this video. You can subscribe on YouTube as well. We just hit 3,000 subscribers. Our next goal is 4,000. You can also follow us over in audio form, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, 5 days a week, even through the offseason. Even though football is done for the Ravens, that does not mean we stop here. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday for the Ravens content over here. But now let's continue talking about it. I teased the question from Instant Classic in the final segment, who says, will we see Lamar Jackson in a Ravens jersey again? This has been it's been a touchy subject. It's been one that a lot of people have flip-flopped back and forth on. I am less confident than I was at the start of the season. I personally thought that his deal would have been the first to get done out of that class. Obviously, Josh Allen's was, and that deal's looking like a steal. Patrick Mahomes, his deal's looking like a steal. I think we do. I think we do see Lamar in a Ravens jersey again, but there's a long way to go from both sides to be able to get there. I just think that if the Ravens, if they were to lose Lamar Jackson, it's an all-time fumble. You're losing a guy. I go back to the Family Guy reference where Peter Griffin has the mystery box. You can either get a boat or a mystery box. And the whole thing is, well, you can get the boat or you can get a mystery box, which could be a boat, but it could be something terrible. So for the Ravens, you have Lamar Jackson. You know what he brings. You would like to see a little more in terms of playoff success, although he hasn't made it there the past 2 years in terms of actually either the team or just playing healthy in it. But he is somebody who you know is one of the top tier players in this league. And I think will continue to get better still. You know, he's entering year 6 next year. So to me, I would rather have Lamar Jackson over resetting with whether it be a rookie quarterback or someone in his second or third year who you don't know if he's going to be nearly as good as Lamar Jackson, if he can vibe with the team, can get into the offense and whatever the offense will be next year. So I think we will see Lamar, but there are a lot more questions than answers with him not traveling with the team. Reportedly, according to the broadcast on Sunday night, you have the injury situation. So there are plenty of questions, but we have a comment from D3. Again, players have a great game, then they don't use them the next week. Likely was ignored. I think this is interesting to talk about Mark Andrews, because Andrews obviously one of the best, if not the best, at his position in the league. There's no doubt, there's no question. But I think when Andrews is in the game, the ball doesn't get spread out as much. When he's not in the game, the ball gets spread out a ton. I think we saw it with Lamar. We saw it with Tyler Huntley. We even saw it with Anthony Brown. So I'm not saying get rid of Mark Andrews. That do not take that the wrong way. But I do think that it's interesting, because if you look at the actual box score of this game in terms of targets, Mark Andrews had 10. The next closest was 5, and that was actually J.K. Dobbins. The closest receiver with receiver targets were DeMarcus Robinson and Sammy Watkins with 3. So likely it's just someone who, with Andrews, you favor Andrews out there every time. But I think it's frustrating because I think there are ways you can utilize both on the field at the same time. You don't have to pick and choose, when Andrews needs a break, that's the only time Likely can come in. I think you can utilize Likely as a big slot. You can put Andrews in the slot if you want to. You can move him on the outside. Andrews was cooking corners on the outside. We saw it against A.J. Terrell against the Falcons. He is that type of player. He's that talented. So I'm super hopeful that the Ravens can find a way to utilize those guys on the field next year. We also have another comment from Mike John saying, I'm a Saints fan. You have no idea about postseason pain. Oh, geez, man. The Saints know something about postseason pain, but I raise one Billy Cundiff as postseason pain, plus a couple other things in there too. But I feel like all fan bases have postseason pain in there a little bit. But we have Mama 24. We're used to heartbreak as Ravens fans. Nothing new. This was more heartbreaking than a blowout. I mean, again, it goes back to my question, like, would you rather see the team lose in blowout fashion where it's just kind of like, well, this is how it was expected to go. No Lamar. It's disappointing, but whatever. Or would you rather have kind of the heartstrings tugged on? And, the heart is never still when watching the Ravens over here. So it's just unfortunate that this is the way it had to end for the Ravens. I really do think they could have won this game. But you just go back to those key plays, and it's going to haunt people for a really long time. That play is going to be playing on every national TV station ever. We're going to talk about it here, but again, I appreciate everybody tuning in after a loss too. I know it's super hard to watch anything after your favorite sports team loses. I'm with you. It's hard to talk about it. But it's my job to come up here and talk about it. So we're powering through. We're doing the therapy session right now. We have another one from D3. Harbaugh needs to go. It won't matter if Roman is fired. The old philosophy that Harbs pushes is outdated. I'd be interested to see if the Ravens do move on from Greg Roman and they keep John Harbaugh, who would the hire be? Would it be a retread? Would it be someone with ties to the organization? Or would it be someone who is brand new, who has new ideas, can innovate? Would it be like a promotion? Would it be, hey, we're going to promote T. Martin, or we're going to promote James Urban? Who would that be? I'm interested to see if that's what happens with the Ravens. Caleb White, the time management was bad. Agree, hard agree, all the way. T says, Harb doesn't have faith and confidence in his team. It's written all over his face. I think John Harbaugh's very tired. I think this year was very tiring for him. And it raises a question, or at least a point I've wanted to talk about for a little bit, which is I think the Ravens just play better as underdogs. And I think what Lamar has done has brought a lot of attention to the Ravens. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I think it's really good. And I personally like having Lamar bring that attention. Now, not all of that attention has been good attention in terms of false narratives and all this stuff that's not fair to Lamar first. But I think the Ravens just like being the underdogs. They don't like being talked about. The Harbaugh situation with the injury stuff, some of the comments definitely could have been handled better. I mean, there were some comments he made where he's just thinking, I don't know if that's what you want to say to kind of be in tune with your fan base. But I just think Harbaugh was frustrated for most of this year. He was tired. This team had Super Bowl expectations coming into it. We were talking about, can the Ravens win the North? Can they win the Super Bowl? Can they get there? What's their ceiling as a team? And then it ends in a wild card loss where not a lot of people gave him a chance. But then that's when it started, right? People didn't give him a chance. People were picking the Bengals. They didn't have their star quarterback. And then all of a sudden, you have this team come out fighting. And while they still go down 9-0 because of the Evan McPherson missed extra point, you have, or maybe it was, I'm trying to block out the game, honestly, as we speak. But they go down. And then they come back, they lead at halftime, and they make sure that they make it a game for so I think it was part of that underdog mentality. Hey, no one believes in us. Roquan Smith saying, see you Sunday. It was a chippy game from the start. You can't have that. The Marcus Peters penalty, you can't have that costing your team yards. And honestly, I don't know if the officials saw the actual elbow that he gave to Joe Mixon because they called it taunting. I don't think that's taunt. Like, I think that's like unsportsmanlike conduct. Honestly, he could have been thrown out of the game for it if he saw it. I just think the refs saw him getting up in the face of Mixon. But then you have Jamar Chase flexing. And I'm not saying an elbow is the same thing as a flex, but I think both should have been called in that situation because you have Chase looking directly at Marcus Peters in that situation. So the thing Peters did was not right. It was honestly inexcusable, and it cost the Ravens, and it was also dangerous. But at the same time, I don't know. I wish that would have been called fairly for both sides there. KMP says, what a great job Harbaugh did with very few weapons. Just an amazing effort by Harbaugh. I'm sensing a little sarcasm, just a tiny sarcasm in there. But it is frustrating with the way the Ravens roster was constructed wide receiver-wise in the offseason. Again, for myself and many others who were calling for that veteran outside addition to come in here. The Ravens have invested first-round picks, right? They've invested in Hollywood Brown. They've invested in Rashad Bateman. You can even go, they invested a third in Miles Boykin. They invested a fourth in Tylan Wallace, third in Devin Duvernay. But having a veteran or someone who is a proven stud, like a high-end wide receiver 2, if not wide receiver 1, it just opens up so many things for an offense overall. Still scrolling through some comments here. We have a lot of talk about what the Ravens have done over the course of the season, because this season, I feel like, again, in my eyes, it was AFC Championship or bust. So to me, that's disappointing overall. Giro was gone, thank God. Did that break? Well, I don't know if that broke when I was doing this live, but the whole thing was interesting. I think that what Baltimore has, I got a little lag spike. I usually edit out the lag spike, so hopefully we don't have too many of those throughout the course of this. But I don't think that broke. I'm trying to do a quick peruse through Twitter, but I think that Greg Rowan probably, opinion, not news, opinion, maybe he's probably gone after this. That's what I would do. Comru 52, pay Lamar and get a better OC and put out some money on the offense and not just the defense. This is a good point. The Ravens have been a very heavy spending defensive team where they invest, the $100 million in Marlon Humphrey, the $100 million in Roquan Smith, $70 million in Marcus Williams. You have the big, $44 million with Marcus Peters. On offense, you have the big, $56 million-ish to Mark Andrews, right around $100 million to Ronnie Stanley. But now you have to either commit to Lamar or not commit to Lamar. That's the question. I think they should. I think Lamar is your guy. He's proven it. He's a proven top-tier option. But it goes beyond Lamar and the fact that you got to get him offensive weapons where you have the running back weapons, you have the tight end weapons. The offensive line, I thought, played much better than I expected them to this year. The glaring hole is the wide receiver area right now in the scheme. I think Rashad Bateman is a high-end wide receiver 2 with a threat like a DeAndre Hopkins as a wide receiver 1. You can have Duvernay as wide receiver 3. I think that's very formidable, plus Andrews, plus Dobbins, plus that. The Ravens don't have a second-round pick this year. It's going to be interesting to see. I think I put out a poll on Twitter, and the question was, would you rather have a star wide receiver be signed or traded for and draft a corner, or sign or trade for a corner and draft a wide receiver? I think I would draft the corner in the first round because there are the questions about Marcus Peters and whether he's coming back or not. Maybe I could see it in a very team-friendly Jimmy Smith type role where his playing time gets reduced in favor of another corner. But I don't think he played consistently well enough this year to justify giving him another big money deal. So if he gets that from another team, then maybe he's gone. But I feel like he would take less money just based off the way he's spoken about his time in Baltimore. Brandon DeShields, Ravens got to spend the money in free agency to get a wide receiver. Adam Thielen and Slayton maybe with Bateman, Duve, and Bridges as top 5. I think that's Shamar Bridges. Draft a corner and move back for it. Roman replace. We back at it with Elgin. So it's kind of what I was saying there a little bit, where Brandon's talking about more of a signing instead of an actual trade. But at the end of the day, I think what the Ravens have right now, they have. It's weird to say they have an offensive foundation because they kind of don't, because you need to have a good offensive scheme to have that offensive foundation. But I think they have players in place everywhere if you bring back Lamar, except for wideout on the offensive side of the ball. And J.K. Dobbins just kept it so real with the media. I'm glad he's speaking out. Let me try to do a peruse. I haven't seen what he said. He said, I didn't get a single carry in the red zone. I should be the guy down close to the heat. Yeah. So yeah, I think he's right. It's been a theme all season. He's been very outspoken sometimes this year about his play call or his carries and what the Ravens have called for him. He just went over his first game with over 15 carries happened a couple weeks ago. He's a player that should be getting, and I get Gus Edwards as part of the equation. He's a big part. You can have the 1-2 punch of Dobbins and Edwards and it works. But Dobbins in a workhorse role, I'm not saying 25 carries. I'm not saying 24. Like, give him like 16 carries. Give him like 18 carries. He is that guy. He is proven, averaging consistently over 5 yards. He averaged 9.6 against the Steelers. You can have that as a player, as an option, and still be able to work in Gus Edwards, still be able to work in the passing game. I agree with J.K. Dobbins. He should have gotten the ball in the red zone. He is a tough-nosed player. He's super hard to bring down. I do believe he deserves more opportunities because he's proven that in limited. This goes back to even in the first 6 weeks of J.K. Dobbins in his NFL career. He had 25 total carries. And if you remember, he was ripping off 30-yard runs and 40-yard runs and all these crazy runs. So I'm hoping that Dobbins gets more opportunities in the future. I don't know. We have Philly Neutrino says, what kind of chips? Lamar eating on his couch right now, barbecue or rippled. I'd go with the barbecue. I'm a barbecue guy, so I don't know if we're doing barbecue or rippled, but maybe I'd throw a little like sour cream and onion in there too. But yeah, the whole Lamar didn't travel with the team. That's a very interesting notion that has gone on for the Ravens this year. And I don't know, at least for what the Ravens had, traveling with the team or not. I think it speaks a little bit to everything that's going on. I'm not going to pin everything on it and say, oh my, like Lamar Jackson is gone because he's not traveling with the team. He doesn't want to be there. I'm not going to I would want to wait for more concrete information on that. But at the same time, I don't know. We have to wait and see with that situation. Talk about the third down where we ran Andrews on a counter from Darren Thompson. Yeah, honestly, I forgot about that one. I'm honestly kind of glad I did. But it feels like Andrews could have picked up the first down if he would have maybe cut it back inside, which is crazy because that's what a running back would probably know what to do. A running back in a situation who has been there before, maybe you can cut it back inside, pick up the first down. Instead, it's a handoff to the tight end. If that's what's in the vault, if the Ravens bring back Greg Roman, they're in trouble. That's what it is. You can't be running those plays in a high leverage situation. I get the whole trickeration, open up the vault, confuse the defense, catch them off guard. It was not a good play call, and it shouldn't have been called at all in the first place. So I don't know what they're going to do. Brandon Bryant says we need Mike Tomlinson. I assume he means Tomlin. Tomlin's been one of the to a lot of people's surprise, I guess. Tomlin's been very criticized in Pittsburgh recently over the last couple. He's kind of in the same boat as Harbaugh a little bit. Now Harbaugh's had like one more losing season than Tomlin has. But at the same time, I think that for what Baltimore has done, that consistency, you have to be really sure, if you're Pittsburgh or if you're Baltimore, you have to be really sure that someone else is going to come in and be a John Harbaugh or a Mike Tomlin or better than them. So that's an area where I think you should get rid of Greg Roman first and then kind of figure stuff out from there. But then we have, also, well, I love John Harbaugh from Philly Neutrino. Maybe that is a little sarcasm in there too. Sib Slay saying Harbaugh doesn't trust defense. It's clear as day. John and them have to go. John is trash. All these different comments about everything here. A starting quarterback is hurt. You can't blame that on the coach. I get it, right? You have to work with what you're given. But at the same time, I think the Ravens were in position to win this game, and they gave it away because of play calling and because of time management and just red zone inefficiency. So I'm never going to blame anything on the coaching staff. Just 100%. I'm never going to blame anything on the play calling, 100%. Nothing on the execution, 100%. It all comes into one big thing. But this time around, every time there is which is kind of the main culprit. This time around, I don't think it was on execution as much. It certainly was. There were certainly plays that weren't executed well, and that's the fault of the players. But I just think the two key situations come down to the end of game time management and that quarterback sneak. So Eli, Miles, Schilling, at this point, it's either Lamar or Harbaugh gone this offseason. I don't think that's necessarily true. Maybe it is. Maybe Lamar leaves. Maybe they fire Harbaugh. I don't know. But I think that there is a situation where both come back next year. Brandon Bryant, who needs to get fired first? I say Greg Roman. Steve O.W. John's overrated. And I don't know what the Ravens will do this offseason. There are plenty of questions. What will they do with Greg Roman? What will they do with the draft? We have ugly playoff losses here from Daniel, which he says, there's plenty to talk about. We have a lot of content in the offseason. I mean, we're going to be talking about Greg Roman, that decision, talking about free agency, Lamar's contract, wide receivers, the draft. This team has pieces. They're just not using them to their full advantage, at least on offense right now. There's a lot of what goes on with the Ravens. How will the Ravens respond to this? There's a lot that they can do. They can fire Greg Roman, start over on offense. I think the defense, you can address one or two holes. Corner is going to be a huge need for them in the offseason. But at the same time, I think what the Ravens have, for the most part, what's going to happen with Calais Campbell? Is he going to come back or is he gone? I don't know. It's going to be difficult, but we'll see what happens at the end of the day here. But that's going to do it for me here on Locked On Ravens, the first ever live show officially in the books. I had a lot of fun. I enjoyed interacting with chat, reading out in the comments. Again, this will be available to everybody in audio form. I'll post it over there pretty much immediately after this is done. We also are going to have our regular Monday show, Monday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We do put out, again, that daily Ravens content Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern. So thank you so much for tuning in with us here tonight. And when we get back tomorrow morning, Monday, 6 a.m., we'll be continuing to dive into this Ravens playoff loss, what's next for them, and more. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you right back here tomorrow.